Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Trinity Tim's podcast. We've got a jam-packed show for you this evening. As usual, I'm joined by Joe McHugh of Video Celts and James Forrest of the Celtic blog, and obviously I'm Eric Knott, who looks after Read Celtic. So, as I said, we've a fair bit to get through this evening. A lot of interesting things happening at the moment. Some good, some bad, somewhere in between. But the first thing that I would like to talk about is Celtic have had a flurry of transfers in the door in the last few days, well, pretty much over the weekend and into today. So we had Benjamin Negron sign just before the weekend. We've had Callum Osman sign today, and reports are that the Japanese defender Inamura has left his club and is on his way to Celtic Park. So while the transfer activity, it's good to have transfer activity, definitely, but out of the three transfers that are coming in, Nygren is the standout. Obviously, we've kind of all agreed previously on the show that Nygren is, we've got him at a steal, for 1.7 million. Not sure what Callum Osman will bring, and certainly not sure what Inamura will bring. So I will pass over to Joe and get his opinion on the latest transfer news and see what his thoughts are regarding the three players that we have wrapped up two and we're about to wrap up a third. What do you think, Joe?
Very similar to yourself. The only one that's of any consequence is Negren. The other two are off the radar, to use a phrase that might be used later on today. So Negren looks a real deal. Congratulations. He's been signed up. He'll be ready for pre-season training. I possibly get a game in Cork. I think he should get some time in Cork next week. Off to Portugal, full training. That's the way it should be done, and it's not really too difficult. The Osman from Fulham makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, as does Inamura from Japan. Oops, bye Eric. I'll take over for now. We've still got 7 projects from 2023 that we're waiting to see what they can do. They've been there for 2 years, and good players tend to come and go from Celtic in 2 years. Van Dijk was 2 years, Wanyama was 2 years, and there's been others. So there's no purpose to signing these guys. We have got no means of developing them. Neither Osman can go on loan to Queen's Park, but not as part of the cooperation agreement. That's only allowed for Scottish players. Inamura at 23 is Japanese. He's too old for it. So we need to find a club to send him out on loan to, or let his career stagnate, like Kwon. Are we going to send him to St Mirren? Are we going to send him to Hibs and cross our fingers? And a decent point I read, I think it was on Kerrydale Street, is Celtic will throw £1 million, 500,000, 300,000 around all these projects, but they'll lose out in players for 500,000. They'll lose out in players for £1 million. So if we just bind all these projects, there is no need whatsoever for any project signings. We don't have a means for developing them. They clog up the place. There's far too many of them around. The only signings we should be making are players that can go straight into the first team and put first team starters on the bench. It's fairly simple and straightforward. And the bigger picture, which I'm sure I'm not the only one concerned about, is this level of signing, with the exception of Negren, all points to life post Brendan Rodgers, and Osman and Namura. They could be the bright new start, just like new signings this time next year when we're getting told how great they are. So not much encouragement. It's great Negren has been signed up in time, but other than that, there is nothing to be. There's more to be fearful than to be excited about in the transfer activities over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, a couple of people are arguing the point that Inamura is, yes, he only has 6 months experience in the J League, but they're saying that he has a similar level of experience to Hatate. But I don't think that's I mean, I suppose Hattati was playing at a better club at a higher level. Inamura's club is just fighting relegation at the moment, and he's coming off the back of a 4-0 defeat. So I'm not 100% sure what right.
Hattati's team won the league, and he was scouted by Ange Postecoglou. There's no comparison to a guy fighting relegation and identified by who knows what. Is it someone in the Mark Lowell consultancy? Is it Paul Tisdale? It most certainly is not Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah. So James, I'll pass over to you for your thoughts. What are you kind of mirroring what Joe is thinking and what I'm thinking? Do you feel the same about it, or are you being a little bit more positive?
I'll be a little bit more positive, but I can't promise to be much more positive. I like the Osmond signing. I wrote a piece the other day about Johnny Kenny, and I was telling him doing a 300 grand move for him. And I wondered if that meant that someone at Celtic Park thought he had a future. And then I read the other day that he'll be sold if we get £1 million for him. So no one thinks he's got a future. After all, Osman has said the right things. He said what I would hope to hear a player who's coming out of the club say. As everybody knows, I've been banging on a wee bit about Lennon Miller for a while. And the sort of unspoken but definitely there sentiment behind a lot of what the media has written about him is that he doesn't have the confidence that would require you to come to a club like Celtic, because if he isn't convinced that he can come in and make an immediate impact, then it's a waste of his time coming, right? So if Lennon Miller feels that way and he feels that he'll be sitting on the bench and he doesn't have a chance of getting out of the first team, then Lennon Miller is someone we should pass on. But this guy hasn't said any of that tonight. He's come in and he's like, I think I can hit the ground running and all that. Good. Excellent. Exactly what we need to hear. Exactly what we need to hear. But his confidence has to be backed up by the manager's confidence, and that means seeing him in pre-season, even if it means dropping Adam Ida to the bench for a while, and even if it means reading some negative headlines about Adam Ida and some not immediate suggestions that Adam Ida is no longer valued or whatever it is, we're just going to chew the bullet. Adam Ida's cost us £9 million. That will be hung around his neck for as long as he's at Celtic Park. Everybody knows I love the guy. I'm a huge fan. I think he's done an excellent job, right?
Yeah.
But the club is living with the transfer fee. He's living with the transfer fee. If he only cost us £4 or £5 million, nobody would blink if we went out and signed a £10 million striker in this window. No one would even blink. But if we do go out and sign a £10 million striker in this window, it's going to be Adam Ida's been relegated to the bench. Adam Ida's been written off by Celtic. That's the headline. We know that's the headline. So we're going to get that headline whatever we do here. So we might as well give this kid a chance in pre-season, shows what he can do. Play him in some of the games, even if that means that Big Adam has to drop it. That's just the way it is. Inamura, I cannot, for the life of me, fathom what in God's name we are doing there. Everybody knows we need a central defender in this window of the proper quality. And this isn't it. And there's no way that anyone is going to be able to argue that this is the kind of quality we need for the Champions League. This is nowhere even remotely close to being that kind of signing. And we all know it, isn't it? And we should stop, people should stop BSing and try to find the ruby in the mountain of rocks here. This is what it is. This is a project signing. And at 23, he's on the upper scale of project signings. Because if this guy sits on the bench for 2 years, any development, that he's going to have is over with. You'll have a 25-year-old with no development potential at all, doing nothing but being a drain on the wage bill. If we've signed this guy to loan him out, then I don't know why we've signed him in the first place. At 23, if you're signing for Celtic, if you're not good enough to play in the first team, then I don't know what the hell we're doing. I don't know what the hell you're doing there. It's a waste of your time at 23. So I don't get that sign at all. Anybody who believes this guy's going to come in and supplant Trusty or Scales or Carter Vickers, I'm sorry, but he isn't. The transfer fee scares the hell out of me, 300 grand. The relative low number of top-class professional games he's played scares the hell out of me. The fact that his team is in the relegation zone is being touted as an alibi for the stats, but it's not really an alibi because, well, put it this way, right? If we're paying 300 grand, right, there's nobody who plays in his position a little bit further up the league table that we could go and get for maybe $1 million or $2 million. That would make more sense.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't get it at all. Genuinely don't get it. If this
Yeah,
guy's
we're going
coming
back into that market.
it's just a waste of time. It's a squad number. It's misuse of a squad number, if you ask me. This guy's hardly going to play. I mean, we know this. We could sit here and we can deny this to our blue in the face, but we know it anyway. We're only lying to ourselves if we pretend that we've signed a first-team player here, we haven't. And the board will be kidding us on if it says this is a first-team player. Rodgers, if he sits there and says, this is the guy I wanted, so this is the guy, so you're going to play this guy against Bayern Munich if we get them again in the Champions League. No, you're not. We know you're not, so don't give us it. We don't need to hear it. I mean, it makes no sense at all. It's absolutely baffling. It's a low ball, cheap, cross your fingers and hope it comes good option. And I don't understand it at all. By the way, all we're doing is wasting this guy's time. All we're doing is wasting his time. He's coming here to sit on the bench, or God forbid, to be relegated to playing football in the Lowland League. He's playing at a higher level than that right now. He's playing at a 4, 5, 6 times higher level than that right now.
But he can't play in the lower league. He's 23.
All we're doing is wasting his time, Joe. I don't get it.
Yeah, he's going to be wealthy for it. So, like
all the signings all the deals that we're doing are rumored to be interested in. This one makes no sense. This makes the least sense of all of them.
Yeah, well, Kobayashi came over. He got half a season, found wanting, a season doing nothing, and then transferred on to the Portuguese second division. He's going to go back to Japan fairly wealthy on the back of that 5-year Celtic contract. And the way the club does business in Amura, he'll be getting a 5-year contract.
Right, okay. Right.
I wish he should get a 2-year contract.
I get your point. I get there's an upside for him. Where's our upside? What do we get? What do we get out of having this guy on the wage bill, hogging a place on the bench, which he's never getting off, unless we're in a complete and utter free-fall situation where we've got no choice but to play him? I mean, I get why he's coming here. I just don't get why we're bringing him here. I know what he gets. I don't know what we get. I genuinely, this one, I just can't wrap my brain around me at all. Just cannot understand it.
Yeah, and you made a very fair point there when you said, like, could we have not gone up a few notches up the J League for a better quality defender if we're going back into that market? It just the whole move just does not make sense. Now, unless the guys have a coherent plan in place for him when he comes to Celtic, but I mean.
Of course, there's a coherent plan. Right? Again,
no, there isn't there's never a coherent plan.
That's an example of what we saw 2 seasons ago, right? 2 summers ago. And as always have said repeatedly, these people can sign whichever wee project signings take their fancy. They can play Football Manager for real with real money and sign all these guys as they like. But the manager is under no obligation and never will be under any obligation to put these guys in the team. So all you're really doing is pissing money against the wall. And I don't get why. But I keep on hearing about how the absentee landlord is this great businessman and this great leader. And he would never allow, ever in his life, allow any other business that he operates in to piss money away like we do on crap like this. Really, genuinely don't get it. Yeah. Genuinely don't get it.
I mean, I did an article before the weekend on the transfer window, and I basically put the question, and I guess this is coming from last summer. Are we once again looking at a summer where the board is waiting to make that big sale, namely Nicholas Kuhn, that they're looking to make that big sale and then they won't spend until they make the big sale? And to me, it's looking more and more likely that is the direction things are headed. And I mean, I put a poll at the end of the article, and 88% of the people reading the article agreed that that's what the board is doing. They're just waiting for their big sale. They're going to give the money back to Brendan Rodgers. They're going to be going.
Oops, he's going again. But I think we can guess the gist
of it.
Get
that man a decent internet connection.
Celtic sell before they buy. If no one's sold, no one's going to be bought. So that helps explain. Welcome back, Eric.
I'm having a bit.
Oops. Goodbye, Eric.
My laptop keeps dropping me out for some reason. I don't know what's happening, but I'll keep coming back each time it knocks me out. But so yeah, I mean, I don't. The early signs in the transfer window are not promising. They're pointing towards a lot of negative things, as Joe has pointed out. pointing towards the fact that these signings look like project signings, and this is not the, I suppose, the sign that we want to see if we're hoping that Brendan Rodgers will be staying at the club beyond the 3 years. So we need to see a bit more spending anyway. 1.7 million on Benjamin Negren is the biggest, and it kind of goes back to this time last year. We were looking at $1 million having been spent on Sinisalo, and that was then we just sat on that for ages. So it's getting a bit concerning at this point.
A goalkeeper's different. I see somebody mentioning Naroki. I mean, that's just such nonsense. Naroki is incapable of being available for a dozen games in the trot. It was the best of a bad lot in the Glasgow derby, and he was okay against Hearts the week after. Anyone shouting for Naroki, have a look back at the Sligo friendly. I think it was last October. It was horrendous. He get turned left, right, and centre against Sligo. It's one of those regular stories of, but the longer someone's out, the greater they are. Yeah. Have a look at the clubs interested in Naroki. Nobody's interested. I think the team that finished fourth in Poland might want to take him in loan. If he was any good, there'd be competent clubs in Belgium or Holland at least coming in and want to sign him. So dream on with Naroki. It's not happening.
Yeah, no, I'd agree as well. He's just he's part of that gang that came in 2 years ago that have just amounted to very, very little. And as we said last week and discussed pretty much in depth last week, that Yang is the only one. Yang is the best of a bad lot, and that's saying a lot.
Last week we talked about how we can't have the Rodgers contract situation dragging into the season proper, right? If Rodgers doesn't sign a new deal early on, right, and we go into the season with him, people are going to say, when was it clear that Rodgers was going to sign a new deal? Well, we can say the Anamura signing was the clear sign that Rodgers was going to sign a new deal, because I don't think that Rodgers will know what to do with this guy. I don't think Rodgers will have a plan for what to do with him. And it feels like a signing being made for a post-Rodgers era. That at least is the spin a lot of people are going to put on it. That's part of the problem with Rodgers not signing a new deal. If Rodgers doesn't sign a new deal, then ideas like that will take root and they will spread and multiply. And we don't need it. It's a signing that makes no sense from any perspective you look at it.
It very much has this in
limbo. It virtually invites negative PR as well. It's one of these signings that virtually invites negative PR, where everybody's got to be sitting around going, did Rodgers really sign this guy? Is this the guy that Rodgers thinks is an upgrade on what we already have? Because that's what Rodgers evidently wants. And say we now go out and sign the £5 million central defender that we badly, desperately need. What happens to this guy? Does he become fifth choice? And where's his development potential then? I mean, there's just no universe in which this makes any sense. It's like throwing darts at a board and hoping one of them. It's like blindfolding yourself and throwing darts at a board and hoping that you hit something. That's how our transfer strategy looks like it works at times. And this just doesn't.
It does. It doesn't make practical business sense. It just doesn't. Yeah. So look, we could dwell on this all night and get ourselves wound up, and we know right now that our board isn't going to change its way of operating. We're all preparing ourselves for the worst, and I think that's the best thing we can do in transfer windows at this point in time is just prepare ourselves for the worst, and anything after that's a bonus. You know what I mean? So we'll put that in the rearview mirror for tonight, and we'll move on to the next subject on our agenda for tonight, and that obviously is Metal, David Murray's new autobiography. Now, Reach, who are the company that owns the Daily Record, obviously are publishing this autobiography by David Murray, and the first snippet of it came out last Friday, and in it he stated that Peter Lawwell wanted to bury the old Rangers 1872 as I call them. So I wrote an article on it, and I said at the time that Peter Lawwell did nothing of the sort, and David Murray did that pretty much all by himself. And I said the catalyst to that was his statement in 1998, where he said, "For every fiver they spend, we'll spend a tenner." That's when he started digging the hole that buried his club, and the necessity to keep up that pretense thereafter was what set them on the rocky road to where they ended up in 2012. But we're getting bits and pieces and snippets relating to the novel on a regular basis since then. But everybody's coming out of the woodwork at the moment, including, obviously Murray is trying to say that he was duped. Keith Jackson is in the media today, or in his article on Monday morning, the usual Monday morning article that he has, saying that he was duped. So, like I said, I wrote an article this evening, and I said they're making out like, Craig White was like Frank Abagnale Jr., that he was some sort of, absolute expert con man who pulled the wool over everybody's eyes. But
pinstripes.
Yeah, it's the pinstripes, exactly. But look, I'll go to you, James, first on this. What's your opinion on what's coming out so far in relation to this autobiography by David Murray?
Well, we'll start with Keith, because Keith's article this morning was hilariously brilliant. I had more fun this morning writing my rebuttal to that than I've had in a long time. His whole thing that he was part of a wee clique that tried to stop this is so stupid and so out of bounds. What we all know actually happened is to be hilarious, and it's not the first time he's tried this. Keith's been trying this on for a wee while. In 2020, he did a big lengthy thing about this when Craig White released his book. What it was all, we all knew he was a liar. Well, you really didn't. Okay, let's say, for example, you didn't know he was a liar, right? Let's give you benefit of the doubt, right? Which I'm loath to do because I don't believe it for a minute, but let's give you the benefit of the doubt. If you knew he was a liar, all you had to do was go to your editor and say, the bigger story here is that the guy who's about to buy Rangers is a charlatan, crook, call it what you like, right? Now, I don't believe for a minute your editor wouldn't have published that story. I don't believe for a minute that the Ibrox fans as a whole would not have bought that story. They would have wanted to know who was taking over the club. They'd have been happy to get that information when it still mattered. And you didn't do it. So how are we supposed to believe any of this? Oh, I was involved in a wee group that tried to stop it. Well, you could have stopped it by writing about it. That would have stopped it. It was still a chance of stopping it. It might not have done any real good if Murray was determined to do it, but you could have done something. And Murray himself, I mean, what else are you going to say about Murray that's not already been said? I mean, I think the book will be useful in recent years as a fantastic psychological insight into a sociopath. And I wrote about that there. It really offers a fascinating picture. A guy with sociopathic personality disorder. He ticks every single box in what's called the dark triad: narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. He's completely self-absorbed, ruthless, vindictive, petty. And reading even the excerpts from that book, it's all about blame shifting. It's all about rationalization and justification, and even some outright lies just thrown in for fun. The idea that he funded any of that club out of his own pocket, as we all know, is absolutely nonsensical. The money for that came from a bank that just threw endless money at him and a bunch of other people, and eventually wound up on the verge of being liquidated. Had a wee secret deal in the Treasury. No, saved it. Gordon Brown personally brokered the deal for Lloyds to take over Bank of Scotland, and David Murray barely spent a penny of his own money on that club in all the years he owned it. The whole thing is just a self-pitying screed. It's all. I mean, I would like to apologise to the Rangers fans for my part in this, but I didn't actually play a part in it. I feel really sorry for them, but actually, I really feel sorry for myself because it's tarnished my legacy. Make your legacy is set in stone. That's it. You're the guy who killed Rangers. You're no Craig White. David Murray killed Rangers. That's it. Well, a bit of help for Walter Smith as well, by the way. I don't like letting him off. He doesn't get away quite so easily. because he really was the last manager standing before Murray sold it to White, and he handed the poison chalice and all the other toxic assets to his assistant and said, "You deal with this now," and fecked off. He even went. Did he not even go to work for White at one point on the board? I mean, honestly, the number of people try to run away from this, you know what I mean, with their hands stained in blood, amazes me. It really amazes me. Take some pride in it, guys. You killed Rangers. I'd be proud of it if it was me.
Absolutely. What are your views on it, Joe? You kind of gave the opinion that you were avoiding it all. Is that going to be your continued stance on it?
I'm absolutely ecstatic to see David Murray back again. It's fantastic. It's sort of a long lost friend. I mean, the things that he did to kill that club, and he could have just sort of disappeared. But he could have went over to one of his famous vineyards in France, the south of France, and got on with life. But he's back with us. He's barely recognisable, which is another bonus. He's got a nice boozy red nose. That's good. If you check the cover for the book, the red nose is unrecognisable from the one that's been popping up. Ewan Cameron, Roger Hanna, Radio Clyde, and the good one. My dad alerted me this morning. He's on tomorrow with Jim White and Simon Jordan. So Jim White will barely be able to sleep tonight. He'll be overexcited. But Simon Jordan, there's a possibility he might launch a little grenade or two. Simon Jordan may be a little bit off message. But Jim White, he'll have been practicing all day what he's going to say to Sir David. So that's good fun. But a couple of points. You can tell by the people he selected to speak to, starting off with Ewan Cameron. I mean, that was hilarious.
That was amazing.
The Keith Jackson stuff has been off the radar. It is utterly fantastic. Keith, to be fair, there's quite the Sun was in on it. The Herald, the Express, the Evening Times, they were all in on the Craig White story to begin with. They all get different versions of it. And Keith surpassed himself. That's why he picked up the Sports Writer of the Year award 2012, 2013, 2014. Congratulations. Keith just went completely overboard, and he did not publish a single word of criticism, not a word of warning about Craig White until June 2012, a month after the pound coin had been tossed towards Sir David. So between November I'm getting my years mixed up. It was June 2011. So the billionaire wealth off the radar, that was November 2010. The pound coin was thrown to David Murray in May 2011, and there wasn't a word of criticism or warning in the Record. A month after the takeover, the Record published stories about Ticketus. And the Ticketus story first appeared on Kerrydale Street. Back then, Celtic and others were well served by Kerrydale Street was a fount of knowledge. Paul McConville, Phil McGillivray, and Rangers Tax Case. Those websites were miles and miles and miles. It wasn't hard, but they were miles ahead of the mainstream in this. But Kerrydale Street had been debating Ticketus for a couple of weeks. Folk couldn't believe how they'd get away with it.
Thank you, mate. Because I got a hard time about that. I actually gave, way back in the sands of time, I gave Jackson credit for having broke one story during that. And the amount of mail I got saying, he never broke that story, boy. I'll get your facts right. That was the Kerrydale Street boys that broke that. And 100% right.
Wait, it gets better. The Record published that story. It was in print. Back in the day, there's quite a lot of people. And during 2010, 300,000 people a day were buying the Daily Record, digging into their pocket and buying the Record. So in June 2011, Keith alerted them all to Ticketus, and the Record nearly had a meltdown. You will not find that story online. It was quickly deleted online. The Record apologised to Rangers, as they were at the time, and
So
they were quickly on board, and they got the blockbuster stories about Matt Mackay being signed from God knows who in Australia, and Juan Ortiz from some Spanish second division minnows, who's apparently the Messi of his day. So the record, give them credit, they did publish one story a month after the takeover, warning about Ticketus, and then they quickly bolted, they deleted it, they backpedaled, they were back on board, they were all on board for the Craig White and Coisty Revolution. Thank you, Malmo, thank you, Maribor, and it all went upside down since then. So it's hilarious. It's as if these guys don't realise that folk can check things out. There is, if anyone anywhere can send a word of criticism, a word of warning that appeared in the Daily Record between November 2010 and the takeover, the pound coin in May 2011, please do so. Please correct me. I would love to be proved wrong. And apologies to Keith and all the lads at the Record. But as far as I'm aware, there was not a cheap, nothing. Craig White owned a castle, therefore he's a billionaire. He had a mortgage in a castle. A year or two later, his wife and 3 kids were homeless because he defaulted on it. But there was nothing in the Record, nothing anywhere else. So it's great to have Murray back again. He hasn't changed a bit. He's doubled down, trebled down, all the old bombast. He's full of himself. And the story about Peter Lowell, I mean, and that is laughing with anything else. Peter Lowell, if only David Murray did as much for that club as Peter Lowell has done for clubs from Ibrox. He did his level best. In the summer of 2012, he was utterly lost. He'd lost his good friend Martin Bain. He feared losing his old firm trademark. It was the worst of times imaginable. Later on, he would tell anyone that would listen that losing Rangers was costing Celtic 10 million a year. Losing out in Champions League money was costing Celtic 30 million a year. And Celtic, Neil Lennon got us through 2 Champions League campaigns, and then it was Maribor at Celtic Park, Malmo away, and the cast was set. After that, it was team A. Brendan Rodgers managed to pull us through 2 campaigns, and then the managed decline set in AK Athens, followed by Ferencváros, Midtjylland, etc., etc. So it's one of those ones, whatever Murray says, take the exact opposite and you'll not be too far away from the truth. So hope there's more revelations from Sir David. God bless him. I wouldn't normally recommend it, but I suspect Talk Sport tomorrow, some point between 10 and 1, Jim White on his hands and knees. Murray, I think this one is going to be live, so Simon Jordan might have the chance to do some damage. We'll see if he's got any credibility, or whether he just sits back and allows a love-in, just like the good old times between Jim White and his friend stroke hero, Sir David.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was an Ibrox podcast went on Friday evening where somebody, I think it was who was it? Tam Selleck's son released with the tin hats. Did you guys see that snippet that I sent?
Yep,
where basically they jumped on the bandwagon that Peter Lawwell destroyed and buried Rangers. The old club,
and John Reid. John Reid was employed by HMRC, so that's utter nonsense. John Reid's last cabinet role was in May 2007. Craig White threw a pound coin 4 years later, and liquidation followed 5 years later. So John Reid had no role to play in it, but it suits them all to blame. John Reid, SNP, Co-op Bank, the Vatican, etc., etc. So let them go on with it. And meanwhile, there's something a bit sinister going on across the pond with the 49ers, but they're deflected away from that for now.
For now.
Oh, yeah. For now, yeah.
Oops, he's gone again. What's the agenda? What's next up, James? What are we talking about next?
I do believe you're talking about Rod Stewart, but we'll wait till the man comes back on for that.
Oh.
Yes. I don't know if it's my internet or what this evening, but something keeps knocking me out of the system here, and it just I just keep having to log back in. But I'll keep going as best I can. It just I mean, my signal is full strength, so I have no idea exactly what's happening or why it keeps kicking me out.
Rod Stewart.
Rod Stewart. And that's exactly what I was going to put up. Look, from my perspective, Rod Stewart, I just don't give the guy any airtime. I just don't take any notice of him. I have a mental block when it comes to Rod Stewart and his connection with Celtic. I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. Because if I did, I'd go down a rabbit hole I don't want to go down. But James more than went down the rabbit hole that I want to go down or would go down if I was put in that position this morning with the article that he put out about Rod Stewart. And to be fair, his carry-on in Glastonbury, I mean, if the guy has any brain in his head, which he appears not to have, he surely be to God. He realizes the kind of way he's alienating himself from the Celtic support. If there are any remaining Celtic supporters who actually take the guy seriously now after his behaviour at Glastonbury yesterday. So, James, fire away. Let rip.
Well, I'm going to start by saying that people have their heroes, and they're never going to be dissuaded from loving the people that they love. There is a fantastic Dave Chappelle moment where he talks about R. Kelly and R. Kelly's fans and said that if you are an R. Kelly fan who's a bit torn after all the revelations about him, you should get the tape of him peeing on the 15-year-old girl and you should superimpose on it, "I believe I can fly," and just enjoy it as a spectacle. Because as the second you put "I believe I can fly" over that pee tape, it suddenly changes the whole tone of the piece. It changes the whole tenor of what you're watching. And that is about as brazenly as I can put it. Some people will love this guy no matter what he does, no matter who his friends are, no matter what stupid ass opinions that come out of his mouth. But I think this is entirely the wrong time for anybody with any connection to your club whatsoever to be endorsing a piece of shit like Nigel Farage. Because in case people haven't noticed, we're in a very dangerous moment here. A very dangerous moment. The Starmer government might be collapsing right in front of our eyes. I'm not saying that there's a good chance that will happen, but it is not outside the realms of possibility any longer. If he loses tomorrow's vote, and there is a good chance that he will, he's already in existential trouble. And if his government collapses, then God alone knows where we are right now. Because some of the polls say that if an election was held tomorrow, we'd have Prime Minister Farage. Now, I don't quite believe that. But if there's a 20% chance of it, am I willing to take that chance? No, I wouldn't be. It's like playing Russian roulette. So I would rather we didn't do that. So anybody endorsing this guy at this extremely dangerous moment is more than just a moron, right? Now, Paulina is a new member of the blog and a really good friend of the blog. And one day we're going to get her on here very soon, hopefully. And she is from Poland. Now, she loves being a Celtic fan primarily because we are seen by her as being welcoming and all-encompassing and a safe space for people from her background, right? That is completely anathema to the likes of Farage and the people around him. These people would not be in a safe space if these people ran this country. If these people even had a scintilla of influence on this country, this would no longer be a safe space. And if you are going to endorse those kind of views and sit in the Celtic stand, and if people defend you on the basis that that's just an opinion, and we shouldn't be denying anyone the right to have an opinion. Well, as I said to a couple of them on Twitter today, you will have no problem then when Tommy Robinson is in the seat next to you. But I'll be the guy behind you shouting that you better get to fuck before someone kicks his head in. To me, I just don't get it at all. I don't get how somebody who claims to understand this club, who claims to love this club, who sings grace at the top of his freaking voice anytime that there's a camera near him, can support someone with those kind of views. Right now, when they supported Johnson, that was one thing. That was just some stupid ass buffoonish. One buffoon loving another buffoon, right? I said at the time when I wrote about it that Johnson is much more dangerous than that, and that's a stupid opinion for anybody to hold, right? Farage is 10 times more dangerous than Johnson. 10 times, 100 times. His party is far more dangerous and far more destructive to this country than any Tory government has ever been or could ever be. And you can endorse that kind of view if you want. But that view is sadly, completely, grotesquely at odds with everything that our club is supposed to stand for. Everything is supposed to stand for. It's horrendous.
Would you echo that, Joe?
I agree with all that, but there's a very large portion of Celtic fans that would have watched last night and thought, whoa, that's great. Look at Rod. Rod's one of us. Look at him promoting the Celtic brand. But no, Rod Stewart's an opportunist. Boris Johnson's an opportunist, and so is Nigel Farage. So you can see they all go with the flow. Horrible people, every one of them. At one stage, Rod Stewart was pretty trendy. Then once you get to know him, once you get to find out a bit more about him, you don't. I don't think many rank and file guys that go regular to matches will like it. But if Rod Stewart turns up anywhere in Europe, anywhere in North America, and he's got a Celtic Celtic kit on, or the drummer's got the Celtic badge in his drums, there'll be folk in the audience swooning away and identifying with Rod and Celtic. So it's very unpleasant. It's a difficult position for the club to be in, but I don't think Celtic promote Rod Stewart too much.
No.
They could stop playing his version of Grace at home matches. That would be a start. He did open the North Stand. I was him that opened the North Stand 30 years ago, and he got a seat in the director's box for that. But I don't know if they need to give half a dozen of his hangers-on seats alongside him for matches. So I'll have some sympathy for the club in this one. It's very, very, very rare, but it's a difficult situation for them. Rod Stewart is a horrible old man. He's like many old Englanders that you find here and there. Or you find them quite common in holiday. They're little Englanders down to their... I don't know what phrase quite to use, but they're little Englanders 100%. Rod Stewart's used Scotland for publicity. He's used Celtic for publicity. Hopefully, he's going to retire soon, and we won't have him being associated with Celtic much longer.
By the way, I just want to come in on something that some of the guys in the comments have said. They seem to have misjudged what I was, or misunderstood what I was saying about Mr. Starmer. I am the last person on this planet right now who can be called a Keir Starmer fan. My God, the stuff I've written about him lately. No, I am worried about the collapse of a government that may be all that's holding us back from a reformed UK government. I have no sympathy with the position that Starmer and his government has found itself in, none whatsoever. Any Labour MP who votes for that bill tomorrow should be horsewhipped through the streets. If that government fell and there was no risk whatsoever of a reformed UK government, I would give it the final push if I could. But we're in a dangerous time to be contemplating.
Yeah. No doubt about it, but I mean...
Whoops. Somebody's nobbled Eric tonight. I thought my problems were bad. His internet seems fine, then he just gets cut out. Welcome back, Eric.
It keeps cutting me out. I don't know what's going on, but I'm obviously I'm not as connected to British politics as you guys are, obviously, because you live on the island of Britain. So for me, I suppose watching it from afar, I'm not impressed with Keir Starmer in any way, shape, or form, and what the man just, his policies have just been a ball of shit, if you ask me. And Nigel Farage, the idea of him getting any power would, I think even that would put the Trump situation in a very mild light in comparison. Put it that way.
Anyway, for arms.
Yeah, definitely. That's getting the ultimate psychopath in charge of your country. That's my view on that. But So we'll move on. I could get cut out here. Don't know. So I'll keep going. I'll forge along anyway. So the next point on our agenda is just what exactly is the board playing at the moment? Which direction are we really headed going into next season? That's the big question. And I think we got to ask the question, and we touched on that. Joe, you touched on that earlier on, and I'll let you take this question and as soon as I'm done. Do we really feel, based on the signs that we're seeing, that we're planning for life without Brendan Rodgers?
Oh, 100%, absolutely, no doubt whatsoever. Rodgers has never been welcomed back by the people that are pulling the strings on a day-to-day basis. Everything that's been done for him has been reluctantly provided, and so far in the transfer window, that's the same. So there is no strategy. There's no plan. I was listening to a podcast. I can't remember who it was, but I think it might have been the 20-minute cynics, and they says we should really be planning. Well, it was quite alarming, the qualification process that's coming Celtic's way. They really need a good, strong performance this year in the Champions League to have some decent coefficient points. But if Celtic invested in players and for some reason they never made it into the Champions League, then they should have a very, very strong claim to go deep into the Europa League as compensation. It's not ridiculous to say that if Celtic fell into Europa League, which none of us want, they should be able to reach the last 8. That will keep finances going, boost the coefficient, etc., etc. And if that happens 1 year in 5, but I don't think there's any policy. There's no vision. There's no targets. They'll take whatever comes their way. Europe's a bit of a bonus. As long as they stay ahead or close to their friends at Ibrox, that's all that matters. I mean, the January transfer window was an opportunity to push forward. That was declined, and not only declined, they weakened the club by selling a striker with no intention of signing a replacement. We're more than a month on since the season finished. There's still nothing credible about a striker. Perhaps he might sign Ferguson from Brighton in the final couple of days of the month, and that'll be predictable, but it's not long term. So there's no strategy, there's no policy. They'll take whatever comes their way. Supporters would love to be back in the Champions League, with a stronger squad, with a manager committed. But as things stand, it's 50-50 at best for reaching the Champions League. Probably 40-60 against at best, Rodgers staying on. And it could be quite easily be a season of the Europa League, speculation about Brendan Rodgers. And this time next year, does anyone think that Celtic will be in a stronger place? I doubt it. But we'll wait to see. Glass half full. Rodgers about to sign a new contract. There's a few transfers coming round the next couple of days. None of us expect that, and if you don't expect anything, you won't be too disappointed. But there will be folk disappointed. There's folk expect Celtic to be forward thinking, think there's ambitions. But last season, the Champions League, that looks more like the exception, and we can hark back to that. Oh, mind that season we beat RB Leipzig and reached the last 16. Instead, that should be the base for going forward. But I think that'll be the exception. It was similar when Neil Lennon took them into the last 16 of the Champions League, beating Barcelona, get drawn against Juventus. The following season, everything went very flat, and that was in the back of selling various players, including Victor Wanyama, and bringing in Timu Pukki and things. So pessimistic as ever, realistic 100%. Your take, James?
Well, there's a scenario that some of our fans long to see happen, and which I think is a realistic concern for the rest of us. Like a genuine lie awake at night and toss and turn over it concern. This idea of Moneyball strategy and analytics is one of the most dangerous ideas that's taking root in football at the moment. And there are a lot of people who believe that clubs could and should be run solely on that basis and are willing to give it a try. And I know there are people on our board who feel like that's how we should be run. And the reason you know that is that some of their handymen in Celtic fan media have written about this subject extensively and have promoted this as being our future. And in that future, according to them, it does not matter who sits in the dugout. Does not matter at all. Because that guy's only responsible for training the team and picking the team. All the other strategy will be decided for him. He will get the players that he is handed. He will have to make the best of what he gets. And if that means that we go through some lean years in order to post bigger profits, then that is the way that these people want it to be. And I'm not exaggerating that. This is seriously the way some of these people think. And I know that because they have said this, that it's the way some people on our board think. They genuinely want us in a place where our entire strategy is run on the back of data analytics and numbers. And they think that you can take the top class manager out of that equation. And that troubles me immensely. It is the kind of thought that will keep me up at night. And we will know very soon whether that is the thinking of the sport. Because if Rodgers goes at the end of the season, then one of two things will happen. We will either hire another architect, and that will be very damn difficult if that person is told, you don't have the gravitas to make demands like this, and so you're going to do things our way. So hiring an architect is going to be very difficult. Instead, we're going to get one of the people who's willing to work under that system. And that means we're going to have our very own Ibrox boss sitting in the dugout. Someone very underwhelming to the supporters, someone we know a great record, but somebody who's willing to experiment with our money and our club and do things the way the number crunchers and the bean counters want them done. And I'm very, very, very concerned that that's where we're going to end up.
Yeah, 100%, James. I'd echo those concerns wholeheartedly. And I suppose one of the things that I struggle to kind of wrap my head around is we did so well in the Champions League last season. We made a lot of money. I think, somewhere in and around 40 million quid. Now, for guys who the bottom line and money seems to matter most to, you would think they would be pulling out all the stops now to get us into the Champions League again for access to that finance.
No.
But that's not the case. And
that's like the gamble just doesn't seem worth it, does it?
Yeah.
The downside just doesn't seem worth taking this bigger risk. And
that's like it doesn't make any practical sense to me. If these guys are businessmen, the bottom line is what matters most to them, then you've got to risk and reward. You know what I mean? So they've got to take a risk for the reward, and they're not willing to take the risk. These guys never have been risk takers. They won't take a fucking risk ever. And for me, let me finish, Joe.
Okay.
For me, we are looking at an absolute carbon copy deja vu of 2018 right now, and that transfer window. We're looking at the catalyst that we that ended up with Brendan Rodgers leaving the club. We're looking at sale of a big player. We could see Maeda go out the door last minute, because they've said 21 million quid is the price tag on him. Now somebody comes in with 22, 23 million, he's gone. They won't hesitate in letting him go. And I feel like we're back at 2018, and we're back in a position where Brendan Rodgers isn't going to be backed. Because he isn't going to be backed, he'll see out this year because he knows he has to. But these guys make me want to bang my fucking head off a wall. They really do. I just feel like continuously banging my head off a wall because it's rinse and repeat the same shit over and over again. And it gets so wearing and so frustrating. Because this club can do so much fucking better.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah.
They are not businessmen. Absolutely not. The so-called CEO is a lawyer, and he's terrified of everything. The chairman is an accountant, and he's never risked He's never even thought about taking a risk. Everything is prepare for the worst case scenario. Talking about money in the Champions League, so what? We made a packet in the Champions League last year, and we're not seeing any of it reinvested in the club. Not in the playing squad, not in the infrastructure. There's nothing. They're building they're building Barrafield, which will be a complete waste of space because the players in there will be playing in the Lowland League next season. So they'll be in profit, and if the profit's £30 million from a Champions League season, or 15 or 10 million from a Europa League season, so what? It doesn't make any difference. The team players will be sold to buy players. The level of buying is determined by the level of selling, and life will just keep going on in this cycle. Yep, we're going back to 2018. Various others. I mean, if anyone can tell me the season, Martin O'Neill, since Martin O'Neill, it's not happened. When have we went out and been buying players, strengthening the squad before selling them? It doesn't happen.
It's all about net spend to zero.
Yeah, when Ange came in, Edouard and Ayer funded that, etc., etc. Starfelt and Jota funded the duds from 2023. Matt O'Reilly funded last season, etc., etc. You might find one season, I think the lockdown season, when we splashed out in Barkas and a Yeti, but over any worthwhile period of time, we sell before we can buy. That determines it. It's not on how much we make in Europe. So we'll wait for someone coming in with something positive, but every shred of evidence points to same old, nothing's going to change, and it's not businessmen, it's accountants and lawyers calling the shots.
See, I think that might be the most important point, Joe. That might be the most important point of all of them. We have one genuine business person on the board, and that is Desmond. One genuine guy who knows how to take risks and has taken risks in his business career. And he leaves the day-to-day running to guys who he wouldn't allow to hold an executive position in any of his businesses because they lack any business acumen or any business sense. They don't take risks. They are the exact opposite of his kind of people, and I don't get why he allows it. I genuinely don't. I've never understood it. But that's probably the most crucial point. These guys don't come from any kind of risk-taking culture. They're basically they're middle managers who've been over-promoted. I mean, the idea once that we had one of the highest paid CEOs, not just in football, right, but in the whole country outside the banking industry, right? So for the money that we were paying Law at that time, I always argued, you telling me there are only 500 candidates out there who could come in and do this job as well as him? That's preposterous. It's idiotic. If we advertised the chief executive at Celtic's job on the kind of salary that guy was getting, we'd had a cure on the block for it. And almost all of them would have been better qualified than him. I don't know. It's frustrating. I feel like Eric said sometimes, like banging my head against the wall. Really
yeah, Disco Dave saying here that we should be proud of the profit the club makes. I mean, come on, Dave. What good is the profit to us if it isn't put into the club?
Exactly. To not use it is to not have it. You may as well be them across the city who have got phantom fortunes. This might as well be a phantom fortune. This might as well be, the money that we have in the bank might as well all be out on the magic money tree somewhere. Because to not use it is to not have it. I wrote an article the other day, and I'm getting stick for it because it suggested that the two clubs are facing different scenarios, with today being the actual end of the financial year. There's a club that needs to bring in money so the books look better. We're a club that should be selling people because they're signing people because the books look too good. And how do the books look too good? Because we're giving money away to HMRC that we don't have to be giving away. You pay tax on the profits. You know what I mean? So that's money that the taxman's getting that should be on the pitch. They've got the opposite problem. They need to make a big sale before close of business today, and they haven't, and they won't.
Like Disco Dave says there again, commercially, and look, I entertain arguments from people who are commenting on the blog or on the podcast, and he says commercially the club performs miracles operating in Scottish football. It doesn't
right.
perform miracles.
I'm going to point something out, right, and this is one of the things that I've sort of semi said in the blog without actually saying out loud, right? So here goes. If the board at Ibrox figures out some way to squeeze extra money out of all their commercial partnerships and all their commercial agreements, and they find some magic untapped source of cash that the Celtic board in over a decade has been unable to find, then heads should be rolling all the way down Jane Field Street.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll find out how good these people are. We'll find out how good they are. Very soon, we'll find out how good they are.
Look, guys, we could go on about this all night long. I know we could keep it going through till about 10 o'clock tonight because it's just a never-ending story, really, But we'll have to wind things up. We're gone over the hour, and
I feel like Jackson got an easy ride tonight.
Yeah, I will. I will make the point before I go, or before we go. That
I never even mentioned Hugh Keevan.
Yeah. There's nothing miraculous about what the Celtic board does. They have a stadium that seats 16,000 or 60,000 people. 60,000 people buy season tickets, season in, season out. We have a fantastic kit deal with Adidas, and people just queue up to buy the stuff. This isn't rocket science.
No.
There's no
selling sweets to the internet.
Yeah, there's no thinking outside the box. These are all standard things that a big club does and should be doing, regardless. But anyway, I will leave it at that and put it to bed for tonight. But I'm sure it'll come up plenty of more times across this summer because we'll get more and more warmed up as less and less starts to happen the closer we get to the Champions League qualifier.
Yeah, we'll be back in next week singing the same song.
So look, we've had record numbers on the live stream again tonight, guys. We hit 145, or I think close to 145 there a few minutes ago. So the live following is growing week on week. So folks, thank you for your support. Keep it coming. Click, hit the bell, hit like, hit follow, and keep subscribing to us. We'll keep growing. We'll keep talking about the things other podcasts won't talk about, and we'll keep providing you with good content week in, week out. But we're going to call it for tonight. I'm sorry about my technical difficulties. My system kept kicking me out, but I think we got there in the end. So we'll call it, and we will be back again Monday night next week. And Joe, you'll be hosting next week, yes?
Yep.
So talk to you then.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Talk to you then, guys. Have a good week.